Have you ever woken up one morning and realized that the child you raised, nurtured, and sacrificed for is now barely listening to you? It can hit like a sudden jolt. One day, you're the primary caregiver with all the answers, and the next, it feels like your opinions and experiences are cast aside. If you've spent decades supporting your children, spending countless dollars on their education, driving them hundreds of miles to sports practice, and helping them measure the ups and downs of life, this change can be both shocking and painful. Suddenly, the roles between you and your children begin to shift, leaving you to wonder what went wrong. Maybe they brush off your advice, roll their eyes when you share a story, or even talk to you in a dismissive tone. Worst of all, they might treat you like an inconvenience, rather than someone whose wisdom should be cherished. But here's the reality. Feeling angry or frustrated won't magically solve the problem. In fact, it often does the opposite. Anger can create rifts that grow wider by the day. Arguments can escalate tensions until neither side wants to pick up the phone or stop by for a visit. That's why it's so important to tackle this issue calmly, yet decisively. You need a strategy that allows you to preserve your dignity and self-respect without cutting off your children or saying things you might regret later. After all, your years of dedication and love shouldn't end with resentment or heartache. You deserve recognition for everything you've done, whether it's the late-night comfort you offered when they had nightmares, the dollars you spent to support their goals, or the emotional energy you devoted to ensuring their happiness. If you're noticing signs that your children no longer value your voice, it's time to reset the balance. They may have their own lives now, and in the hustle of daily responsibilities, they could be unintentionally placing you at the bottom of their priority list. This doesn't mean you have to accept neglect or disrespect. In fact, there are far more effective ways to earn back respect than scolding, nagging, or creating guilt trips. These methods are about self-reflection, assertive communication, and, most importantly, maintaining your own emotional well-being. When you set healthy boundaries, reaffirm your worth, and present yourself as a person with a rich, meaningful life, your children begin to see the parent they once idolized. They remember why your guidance matters. In this video, I'm going to walk you through 6 powerful strategies you can use right now to regain that sense of respect and value in your children's eyes. Each step is designed to help you nurture a more balanced, loving connection, one where your voice is heard, your needs are recognized, and your contributions are valued. Some of these ideas might feel unconventional or even counterintuitive, but I encourage you to stick with me until the end. By applying these strategies, you'll rediscover your rightful place as a source of wisdom and support, rather than a burdensome afterthought. So, if you're ready to reclaim your role and strengthen your family bond in a positive, healthy way, stay tuned, because everything you've been hoping for could be just a few small mindset shifts away. Picture this. You've spent a lifetime putting your children first, rescheduling doctor's appointments, driving across town to help with last-minute errands, and saying yes to the requests, even when your own energy was running low. For a while, it might have seemed like this was the best way to hold the family together. But in reality, respect isn't born out of endless self-sacrifice. Respect grows when you demonstrate that your time, feelings, and well-being matter just as much as everyone else. I recall meeting a remarkable woman named Margaret. In her younger years, she was the backbone of her family and community, a spirited volunteer at her local church, an organizer of charity events, and a confident professional who never hesitated to voice her opinion. But as she reached her mid-60s, a subtle shift took place. She started letting her adult children make every decision for her. It began with small things, allowing them to pick restaurants or set her schedule, but escalated to them dismissing her input entirely. When Margaret realized she no longer recognized the one strong woman she had been, she felt both bewildered and hurt. Her children's behavior hadn't changed overnight. It took years of her putting their wants above her own, staying silent when they brushed off her opinions, and ignoring the sting of their condescending comments. She believed that by going along with everything and avoiding conflict, she was keeping the peace. In truth, she was losing her voice. A hard lesson Margaret learned is that the more we compromise our own needs to earn love, the less that love feels freely given or truly respectful. The first step to reversing this dynamic isn't to lash out or remind them of how much you've sacrificed. It's to stop acting like you need their approval in the first place. Speak up, even when you're worried they might not like what you have to say. Set boundaries, even if it feels uncomfortable at first. Respect your own time and space, because once your children see that you value yourself, they're far more likely to value you as well. Over time, this renewed self-respect can help you claim your rightful place as a vital, respected figure in their lives. After all, children might outgrow the need for parental guidance in some areas, but no one outgrows respect for a parent who has never forgotten their own worth. Have you ever tried to force someone to respect you, only to find the harder you push, the faster it slips away? Respect doesn't come from heated debates or pointed lectures. It's earned by how you carry yourself when tension arises. Take the story of Frank, a retired teacher who once commanded a classroom of spirited teenagers with ease. Yet at home, his grown children treated him like an afterthought, shrugging off his advice and even laughing at his concern. Hurt and confused, Frank initially did what many of us would do, he argued. He pointed out everything he'd sacrificed, reminded them of his lifelong dedication, and demanded they listen. But the more he shouted, the more his children distanced themselves. Then, everything changed when he decided to shift his approach. Instead of trying to prove himself through words, Frank adopted the same confident presence he had once brought to his classroom. He listened, truly listened. When his children spoke calmly when he had something meaningful to add, and allowed silence to settle disagreements instead of escalating them. Over time, his children started noticing. Without a single argument, they began to see the quiet strength that made him a respected teacher for so many years. Frank's calm dignity did what countless arguments never could. It reignited the respect he deserved. I once knew a friend of Frank's, Linda, who applied the same principle in her family and discovered that the fewer battles she picked, the more her adult sons started valuing her words. Respect isn't about winning. It's about showing day in and day out that your own self-worth runs deeper than any momentary conflict. When you embody that principle, you don't just change their perspective. You change the entire dynamic of your relationship. One of the most challenging truths to accept in later life is that your children are not responsible for your emotional well-being. Yes, you love them deeply, and, of course, you long for their love and respect in return. But the instant they sense that you rely on them to feel worthy or content, the entire balance of your relationship shifts. Suddenly, a loving bond can begin to feel more like a burden, feeling impatience and even resentment instead of gratitude. It's not that your children have stopped caring. It's that human nature tends to pull away from relationships that demand constant validation or approval. When you reclaim your emotional independence by seeking fulfillment in new hobbies, friendships, and personal growth, you show your children that you have a life beyond waiting for their calls. And counterintuitive as it might sound, that freedom often draws them closer. I once met a gracious woman named Helen, who illustrated this perfectly. She devoted her every waking moment to making sure her children were happy, paying for college, babysitting her grandchildren on short notice, and rarely declining any requests. But as her kids got older and busier, she found herself sitting by the phone, waiting for them to call. When they didn't, she dialed them instead, multiple times a week, dropping hints about how much she missed them. Far from bringing them closer, her frequent pleas felt like an obligation to her children. They picked up her calls less willingly, and the conversations felt strained and uneasy. One day, Helen decided enough was enough. She enrolled in a weekly art class, something she'd always wanted to do but never found the time for. She began meeting friends for coffee, even discovering local volunteer programs that sparked her sense of purpose. She stopped forcing phone calls or lingering on social media just to see what her kids were doing. What seemed like a small shift in behavior resulted in a large emotional breakthrough. No longer carrying the weight of Helen's every emotional need, her children found themselves actually wanting to call and visit. They enjoyed hearing her talk about her new projects and passions. In stepping away from neediness, Helen found the independence and respect she had unknowingly been missing for years. The lesson here is simple but transformative. When you nurture your own interests and refuse to hinge your self-worth on anyone else, even your own children, you become a source of inspiration instead of an emotional weight. Your children will respect your boundaries, appreciate your personal growth, and view you through a lens of admiration rather than duty. It's not about distancing yourself from your family. It's about nurturing your own sense of joy so that you enter every interaction as a complete, fulfilled individual. That shift in perspective can mean the difference between feeling like an afterthought and being cherished for the wise, resilient parent you truly are. It might feel daunting to distance yourself even slightly from the very people you've devoted much of your life to raising. Yet time and again, we see that the less you rely on your children for your sense of worth, the more they recognize your inherent value. Helen discovered that her children weren't pulling away because they no longer cared. They were distancing themselves from the subtle expectation that she needed them for her own happiness. Once she shifted her attention to nurturing her own interests, her children naturally respected her time and made an effort to stay connected. By showing them she could stand firmly on her own 2 feet, she reminded them how important her presence truly was. But self-reliance is only half the story. True respect also requires clear and consistently enforced boundaries. Many parents believe that tolerating disrespect keeps the family unit harmonious, but in reality, it only teaches your children to keep crossing the lines you never define. Consider Robert, a retired businessman who ran a successful company for decades with clarity and decisiveness. When he applied the same principles at home, insisting on basic civility, calmly speaking up each time his children interrupted or belittled him, he saw immediate changes. Did his children love the new rules at first? Not necessarily. But when they realized that he wasn't budging, they adapted their behavior. To establish your own boundaries, start by identifying specific actions or words that make you feel disrespected. Next, communicate these limits calmly and clearly. No scolding, no guilt trips, just straightforward statements like, "I expect we listen to each other without interruptions," or, "If we can't keep our voices down, this conversation will end." Enforce these limits every single time they're crossed. Consistency is key. Sporadic boundary setting only confuses the situation and weakens your stance. You'll be amazed at how quickly others learn to respect your new parameters when they see you following through. By pairing emotional independence with firm, compassionate boundaries, you create a balanced dynamic where your love for your children remains steadfast and your self-respect remains unshakable. When Robert decided he was done tiptoeing around his children's disrespect, he quickly learned that holding his ground was more powerful than any heated argument. By responding with firm, clear statements, like "I'll continue speaking when you're ready to listen," he signaled that his voice mattered. His adult children initially balked, protesting that he was being overly sensitive, but Robert held steady, reminding them he wasn't trying to change their opinions, only requiring them to treat him with civility. If they couldn't, he explained, he would remove himself from conversations and situations where disrespect was the norm. In time, his children realized they were the ones who needed to adapt if they wanted a relationship with him. They might have tested him at first, cutting him off mid-sentence or rolling their eyes, but he never wavered. Instead of raising his voice, Robert would quietly end the discussion until they were ready to engage respectfully. Frustrated, they eventually recognized their father's seriousness and began to show the courtesy he demanded. And as that courtesy became consistent, their closeness grew. Where before they saw boundaries as controlling or old-fashioned, they started to see them as an expression of Robert's self-worth. I've seen a similar transformation in the story of Donna, a retired nurse who adored her grandchildren, but felt increasingly dismissed by her adult daughter. Whenever Donna tried to give advice on health and nutrition, her daughter would shrug it off. Tired of the dismissiveness, Donna calmly stated she would no longer offer her professional insights unless her daughter truly valued them. At first, this triggered resistance, but within a few weeks, the daughter realized the depth of her mother's expertise and missed having that knowledge readily available. By quietly reinforcing her boundary, Donna not only earned more respect, but also rekindled a deeper bond with her family. The lesson is simple yet profound. If you keep accepting disrespect, it becomes the baseline for how others treat you. Standing up for yourself, whether by pausing a conversation or opting out of an unpleasant situation, forces those around you to either meet your standards or lose your company. This may feel uncomfortable at first, but real respect rarely grows without a little discomfort. By being unwavering in your boundaries, you send a powerful message. I value myself, and I trust you to do the same. Over time, children who truly care will adjust. You'll find yourself having calmer, more meaningful conversations instead of tense standoffs. Remember, it's not about being harsh or cutting them off altogether. It's about setting a clear line that says, I love you, but I also love myself. Ironically, this kind of confidence has a way of drawing your loved ones closer. Once they see you as someone who recognizes their own worth, they'll begin to see you in the same light. And that's the key to restoring the respect you've worked so hard to earn. It's natural for a loving parent to want to give tirelessly. Financial aid, emotional backing, even a shoulder to cry on whenever needed. After all, many of us grew up believing unconditional love means unlimited generosity. But here's the catch. Unconditional love and unconditional enabling aren't the same thing. Constantly giving, especially to those who don't appreciate it, can erode respect, turning gratitude into entitlement. When your children start to see your kindness as a given rather than a gracious act, it's no longer a cherished bond, but a transaction. They feel entitled to it. And the moment you need to draw the line, they don't feel remorse. They feel inconvenience. Take George's story. He was the type of father who never questioned a single favor. Loans for new cars, babysitting on short notice, changing his entire schedule to accommodate family get-togethers. George said yes to it all. Yet, instead of grateful smiles or heartfelt thank yous, he got complaints. His children wanted more, faster, with less fuss. Finally, when George really needed their help, he found himself alone, frustrated, and disappointed. He made a hard pivot. He only offered help when asked, and even then, set conditions that respected his own time and boundaries. At first, his children were confused, some even angry. But a fascinating shift occurred. Realizing that his help wasn't unlimited, they began to value it more. Polite requests replaced demands, and occasional heartfelt thanks replaced dismissive remarks. Now, some might argue that true parental love should expect nothing in return, that it's a parent's duty to give everything. But duty and healthy family bonds can coexist without turning you into a perpetual safety net. Unconditional love shouldn't mean you erode your own well-being, nor should it shield grown children from learning gratitude and responsibility. By refusing to enable unappreciative behavior, you're not withholding love. You're teaching them to respect both you and the benefits you provide. You're also opening the door for deeper, more authentic relationships, where generosity is treasured instead of merely tolerated. If you're caught in a cycle of give and give some more, take a moment to ask yourself, am I empowering my children to stand on their own, or am I teaching them that my resources, time, money, energy, are limitless? The answer could be the key to restoring genuine respect and admiration. not through conflict, but through a healthy recalibration of what it means to truly care. Once you break free from patterns of overgiving, you'll have the emotional space to tackle the next crucial step, building a life outside your children's world, so your happiness doesn't hinge solely on their approval. It's a wrenching moment when you realize that after years of centering your life on your children, they've begun to see you as someone who exists solely for their convenience. It can feel like they've tucked you away in the periphery, forgetting you have dreams, passions, and ambitions of your own. Yet, here's the honest truth. People respect individuals who show they can stand on their own 2 feet. Those hobbies, friendships, and a vibrant life that doesn't depend on anyone else's schedule or validation. By cultivating your own interests, you not only prove your independence, but also spark a healthy curiosity and admiration in your children. Think of Eleanor, a widow in her late 70s who had anchored her world to her kids. After her husband passed, she called them daily, offered unsolicited advice, and waited by the phone for an invitation that never seemed to come. Her children, feeling overwhelmed by her constant need for attention, visited less often. Suddenly, Eleanor found herself alone, her heart weighed down by loneliness. That was when she made the life-changing choice to enroll in a book club, join a local travel group, and volunteer at her community center. By stepping beyond her comfort zone, she rediscovered a sense of purpose she had lost long ago. In an unexpected twist, the more she blossomed on her own, the more her children began calling and stopping by, eager to hear about her new adventures and achievements. Their curiosity turned into genuine respect, an acknowledgement that she was living a full, meaningful life rather than merely passing time. If you're caught in a similar dynamic, ask yourself a bold question. Do my children see me as a person with boundless interests and passions? Or do they picture me simply waiting around for their next visit or phone call? When you demonstrate that your happiness and identity reach far beyond the family circle, you invite your children to see you as a whole, multifaceted individual. You become someone they want to learn from, rather than someone they feel obligated to appease. By shifting your focus to self-enrichment, you'll find that you're not just existing. You're truly living. And in that radiant space of self-discovery, respect naturally flows back into your relationships, transforming the parent-child bond into something deeper, richer, and profoundly more rewarding. As we wrap up today's video, I want to leave you with something to think about. Respect isn't something that can be demanded. It's something you inspire. It's easy to feel frustrated when the people you've cared for and nurtured for so long start to treat you with less respect or consideration. You might wonder why your children don't seem to value your advice or take your feelings into account. But here's the truth. You can't force respect from anyone, even your own children. Instead, you earn it through the way you live, the way you set boundaries, and the way you carry yourself with dignity. If you find yourself feeling hurt, maybe even angry, that your children have started treating you as less of a priority, I encourage you to shift your perspective. It's not about fighting for their respect, demanding it, or reminding them of everything you've done for them. That often only leads to more frustration and distance. Instead, take a step back and think, what can I do differently to inspire the respect I deserve? The answer lies in the way you carry yourself in their presence, the boundaries you set, and how you live your life outside of your role as a parent. One of the first steps is to stop chasing their approval. You might have spent your whole life putting their needs first, but here's the painful truth. The more you chase their approval, the less they respect you. When you constantly put their needs ahead of your own, you teach them that your feelings don't matter. And when that happens, it's easy for them to take you for granted. The key is to stop seeking validation from them. Instead, validate yourself. Show them that your worth doesn't depend on their approval. When you stop needing it, you might be surprised at how much respect naturally follows. Another crucial step is to lead by example. If your children dismiss your opinions, talk over you, or treat you disrespectfully, your first instinct may be to argue with them, to remind them of everything you've done. But arguing only feeds into their belief that they have power over you. Respect is not won through words. It's won through your presence, through the way you respond when others try to test your patience. If you meet disrespect with anger, all you're doing is confirming their belief that they can control you. But when you carry yourself with calm confidence, your dignity speaks louder than any argument could. Lead by showing them what self-respect looks like. When you do this, you'll notice a shift in how they treat you, slowly beginning to value you as the one unified figure you truly are. But there's something else you must also do. Build a life outside of them. For many parents, it's easy to fall into the trap of making your children the center of your universe. But as you grow older, that dynamic can shift. Your happiness should no longer revolve around their approval or their attention. People respect those who have a sense of fulfillment outside of their family roles. If your children see you as someone who lives independently, pursues your own passions, and creates a life full of joy and purpose, they'll start respecting your presence. Not because they have to, but because they have to, but because they genuinely admire you. Think about the story of Helen, a woman who spent years pouring all her energy into her children's lives. When they got busy, she waited by the phone, hoping for a call that never came. Eventually, she made a decision. She stopped waiting. She joined a book club, traveled with friends, and gave herself the space to flourish outside of her role as a mother. What happened? Her children began to reach out more. They respected her independence, admired her new interests, and, most importantly, they saw her as someone who had a life beyond them. This change didn't just bring them closer. It changed the way they saw her. With renewed appreciation and respect, they saw her as a strong, independent individual. If your children aren't respecting you the way you think they should, ask yourself, do they see me as someone with a full, meaningful life? Or do they see me as someone waiting for their attention? Someone whose happiness depends entirely on their approval? When you show them that you can stand on your own, that you are content with your own purpose, you will begin to see them treat you differently. The more you focus on living a fulfilling life, not defined by their actions or opinions, the more they will recognize the incredible person you are. They'll stop seeing you as someone who needs them, and instead they'll see you as someone who commands respect simply by being who you are. Thank you for being with us today. I'd love to hear your thoughts. What's one action you can take today to start commanding the respect you deserve? Leave a comment below and share your story. And if you found this video helpful, please subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss more valuable insights. Your support means the world to us and helps us continue creating content that inspires and empowers you. See you in our next video.